I'm sure you remember this iconic scene from the beginning of the movie Casino Royale. James Bond chasing a bomb maker who seems to be moving like a superhero. This was the first time that parkour was introduced to a large global audience by no one other than one of its actual founding fathers, Sébastien Foucault. While this was great to show what was physically possible for someone who was really good at the discipline, I think it created a large misconception because it failed to show what the philosophy of parkour meant and how it can actually change your life. Something that led to me turning down a high-paying career offer in 2017 to follow my passion instead. Now let's take a closer look. If you look up parkour online, you'll see flips, massive drops, and insane stunts. Something that is part of parkour, but from my perspective isn't really what the discipline is about. Because in reality, the parkour training is structured, methodical, and has a very deep philosophical part. Because in the end, it's about seeing the world differently and interacting with it in an entirely new way. And that's exactly what changed my life. Now, before I tell you how I started parkour, let me give you a little context, because this video right here is video number 3 in my challenge to develop this channel from 288 to 10,000 subscribers. And with the first 2 videos, this channel already grew from 288 to 389 subscribers. So welcome 101 new people. In the last video I talked about the fact that I feel like I don't fit in to YouTube Germany, which is why I made the decision to turn this channel into English. So if you want to be part of the whole journey, you know what to do. In 2013, a friend of mine called me and said, "Ben, I just started with parkour and you have to do this. This is the greatest thing ever." So I searched online and checked for a local community. And back then in Munich, the parkour community was really active, and so it was easy for me to find people to practice parkour with. And I still remember my very first training session, or rather the moment just before my very first training session, because my friend and mentor then said to me, "I have to warn you, Ben, if you try parkour now, if you start with parkour, this will change the way you view the world forever." And of course, I didn't believe her. Why would I? Because I thought we'll just jump around. I was so wrong, and I was about to be proven why. What followed was like a rush. I trained 6 or 7 times a week, 2 to 3 hours a day. I became obsessed with parkour. And now you might wonder, how come you aren't showing us some crazy flips or crazy stunts then? Well, that's exactly my point. Let me explain what parkour really is and why it's actually more accessible than you might think. Parkour is about questioning the rules and testing them. You go to a public space, a bench, a rail, a wall, places and objects where society has agreed on an interaction. And then you simply ask a question. What else could this be? How else could I move here? What if this object wasn't an obstacle, but an opportunity? Parkour training is sometimes playful, sometimes structured, but most of the time it's just creative. And over time, it doesn't just change the way you move, it influences the way you think. And soon after I started training parkour, I felt this shift happening, not just in my training, but also in my perspective on life. After school, I studied electrical engineering. My parents encouraged me to play it safe. And my older brother was already an engineer, so it somehow made sense. So after I finished studying, I got a solid job in product management in 2011. I thought I was happy, but once I had started parkour, I realized what real happiness actually meant and what it felt like. And so sometime after I started parkour in 2013, I began applying that mindset to meetings we had at work. And when everybody agreed that we had hit a wall, I began to think like a parkour athlete. What if we thought about this wall in a different way? What if we tried to scale it? What if we tried to move our way around it. And that's when I realized I wasn't meant to be in that corporate world. I somehow had to create my own. And then came the one moment that changed everything. This is me in 2015, when I had to film a video for work. And when I watched it back, I saw something that really scared me. Do you see what I see? My eyes were completely dead. There was no passion, no fire, no light, no anything. Maybe it was due to the way we produced this because we used a teleprompter. Maybe it was due to the job itself. But I knew one thing for sure. I was absolutely obsessed with parkour at the time, but had zero passion for the work that I was actually doing. And so in 2017, I made the biggest jump of my career. Literally and figuratively, because I had an amazing job opportunity in front of me with higher salary, better position, but I turned it down. I quit my job to follow my passion, to build something on my own. And I wouldn't have had the courage to do it if it weren't for these 3 things that I learned in parkour. Number 1. There is no comparison in parkour. In parkour, comparison can literally kill you. The only thing that ever matters is your own progress. And competing with others is absolutely pointless. In my career, I was 27. I had a higher salary offer than most of my peers, but I only had to compare myself to myself. Number 2. You cannot change the world, but you can change the way you see it. A rail just becomes a rail by our own interpretation. A wall becomes a wall by the way we interact with it. Parkour teaches you that everything in life depends on the perspective. And when I realized I could reframe my job, reframe the way that I make a living, I knew I had to leave. And number 3, you can change the way you interact with the world. You see, when you start with parkour, you're confronted with many challenges, many walls you can't scale, and many things you cannot do. But what you learn over time is, whenever I return to certain spots and certain points, I will have improved. Because if I then go back and work on myself, I can then influence the way that I interact with the world. And that was the most important learning of all those years in parkour. And when the moment came in my career, well, I knew I was ready and I knew I could do it. And that's why I left. You see, I never reached the physical level of proficient parkour athletes that you might know from media or social media. But ever since I became self-employed and started my own business, everything that I learned from parkour has shaped not just how I see the world, but also how I go about my work, which is the reason why I want to introduce you to this philosophy, because it's accessible to you even if you're not able to jump from a building. The idea of no comparison, no competition, and trying to interact with the world differently, it's something we desperately need right now with everything that's going on in the world. And this essentially is what parkour has taught me. You need to understand societal concepts so that you can move through them playfully and swiftly. You need to see things for what they really are, but also what they could be. And of course, you might as well start with parkour. It's really never too late. You can also start by asking yourself one very simple question. Is the thing I'm looking at really what I think it is? Or could I give it a new meaning just by interacting with it in a new way?